Trust as I was the last to know. Even the neighbors knew first. The morning I discovered my life was a carefully orchestrated lie began like any other Tuesday. I kissed Marcus goodbye at 7:15 a.m., watched him adjust his tie in the hallway mirror, and waved from the doorway as his silver sedan backed out of our driveway. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke from the Hendersons' fireplace next door. "Have a great day at the conference, honey," I called out, though he'd already rolled up his window against the chill. If I'd known that would be the last normal moment of my marriage, I might have paid more attention. I might have noticed how he didn't look back, how his shoulders were tense beneath his charcoal suit jacket, or how Mrs. Chen across the street quickly averted her eyes when she saw me standing there in my bathrobe. But I didn't notice any of those things. Instead, I went inside, poured myself a second cup of coffee, and settled into my home office to tackle the day's freelance assignments. As a graphic designer, I'd built a comfortable routine working from home, one that revolved around Marcus's schedule, our shared lunches when he worked from home, and the predictable rhythm of our 12-year marriage. The first crack in my carefully constructed reality came at 10:47 a.m. I was deep in a logo redesign when my phone buzzed with a text from my sister Rachel. "Call me when you get a chance. Not urgent, but we should talk." Rachel lived 3 hours away in Portland, and we typically caught up on Sunday evenings. A random Tuesday morning text was unusual, but I was on deadline. I made a mental note to call her after lunch and turned back to my computer. 20 minutes later, another text, this time from my best friend Janet. "Hey hun, thinking about you today. Here if you need anything." I stared at the message, a flutter of unease stirring in my chest. Janet and I had plans for wine and Netflix on Friday. Why would I need anything on a random Tuesday? "Everything's fine, just working. See you Friday," I typed back. The three dots indicating she was typing appeared and disappeared several times before her response came through. "Of course, can't wait." By noon, the unease had morphed into genuine concern. My mother had called twice unheard of for a woman who prided herself on not being one of those hovering mothers. My cousin in Texas had sent a Facebook message asking how I was holding up. Even my hairdresser had texted to say she could squeeze me in this week if I needed some self-care. I abandoned my work and called Rachel. "Finally," she exclaimed before I could even say hello. "I've been waiting all morning. Are you sitting down?" "Rachel, what's going on? Why is everyone acting like someone died?" The pause on the other end of the line stretched so long I checked to make sure we hadn't been disconnected. "You really don't know," she said finally, her voice a mixture of disbelief and pity that made my stomach drop. "Know what?" "About Marcus and, oh God, Sophia, I can't believe I have to be the one to tell you this." I sank into my desk chair, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. "Tell me what—" "There's a video. It's all over Facebook. Marcus at some restaurant last night with another woman. They were clearly together, Soph, kissing and everything. Someone from his office posted it this morning, and it's been shared hundreds of times." The words didn't make sense. Marcus was at a medical conference in Seattle. He'd shown me the registration email, talked about the presentations he was attending. I'd helped him pack his overnight bag. "That's impossible," I heard myself say. "He's at a conference." "Sophia—" Rachel's voice was gentle now, the way you'd talk to a spooked animal. "The video was taken at Romano's downtown. You can see the street sign in the background. Romano's, where Marcus had proposed 13 years ago, where we went every anniversary." My laptop was open in front of me, Facebook just a click away, but my hands wouldn't move. "Who is she?" The question came out as a whisper. I don't know, young blonde. Someone in the comments said she works at his firm, an analyst or something." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of my desk, forcing myself to breathe. An analyst. Marcus was a partner at his investment firm. He'd mentioned hiring new analysts last spring, bright kids fresh from business school. I'd even helped him review resumes, suggesting he give opportunities to candidates who reminded us of ourselves when we were starting out. "How long has everyone known?" Rachel's silence was answer enough. "No, the video was posted at 8 a.m., she finally said. "But apparently this isn't the first time they've been seen together. The comments, people have been talking Soph for months. Months." The word echoed in my head as I ended the call with promises to Rachel that I was fine, that I'd call her later. Then I sat in the silence of my home office. Our home office, with its carefully chosen furniture and the view of the garden we'd planted together, and tried to process the fact that my life had been a public spectacle while I'd been blissfully, stupidly unaware. With trembling fingers, I opened Facebook. The video was exactly where Rachel said it would be shared, by someone named Derek Paulson, whom I vaguely recognized from Marcus's company holiday parties. The caption read, "Guess the conference got canceled to busted." I clicked play. There was my husband, unmistakably him, despite the grainy quality, sitting at a corner booth in Romano's. Across from him sat a woman who couldn't have been older than 25, with long blonde hair and the kind of effortless beauty that comes with youth. They were leaning across the table, hands intertwined, and as I watched, Marcus reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear before pulling her in for a kiss that was definitely not appropriate for business colleagues. The comments below were a mixture of shock, gossip, and worse pity. OMG, doesn't he have a wife? Yeah, Sophia. She seems so nice too, poor thing. And this has been going on since at least June. I saw them at the Marriott bar after the quarterly meeting. Someone should tell her. Pretty sure everyone knows except her at this point. I scrolled through comment after comment, each one revealing another piece of the puzzle I'd been too blind to put together. The late nights at the office, the weekend golf trips with clients, the way he'd been protective of his phone lately, always placing it face down, taking calls in another room. June. It was October now. 4 months of lies. 4 months of coming home to me, kissing me goodnight, making love to me while maintaining this double life. 4 months of our friends, his colleagues, random acquaintances, and apparently half of Facebook, knowing my marriage was a sham while I planned our anniversary dinner and worried about what to get him for Christmas. The doorbell rang, startling me out of my spiral. I wasn't expecting anyone, and I certainly wasn't in any condition to see people. My face felt hot and swollen, even though I hadn't cried yet. The tears seemed frozen somewhere behind my eyes, too shocked to fall. Through the peephole, I saw Mrs. Chen, our neighbor of 8 years, standing on the porch with a covered dish. I opened the door a crack. "Hi, Mrs. Chen. This isn't really a good—" "I brought lasagna?" she interrupted, holding up the dish like a peace offering. "Tom and we saw the Facebook. I'm so sorry, dear." Even the neighbors knew. How long?" I asked, opening the door wider. "How long have you known—" Mrs. Chen's lined face crumpled with sympathy. "We started noticing a few months ago. Different cars in the driveway when you were at your book club. Once we saw him in the backyard with someone. We assumed it was you until we realized you were at the farmer's market. I'd seen you there earlier. Different cars, our backyard, our home." I took the lasagna with numb hands, thanked her on autopilot, and closed the door. The dish was still warm, the kind gesture of a neighbor who'd known my husband was cheating before I did. I set it on the kitchen counter and noticed everything with new eyes. The coffee mug he'd left in the sink this morning, had he been thinking about her as he drank from it? The note I'd left him on the refrigerator about dinner plans, had he even read it? Or was he too busy planning his evening with her? My phone was ringing incessantly now. I'd left it in the office, but I could hear it from the kitchen and the distinctive ringtones I'd assigned to different people, creating a symphony of concern. Janet's wind chimes, my mother's classical piano, Rachel's pop song, and then cutting through them all, Marcus's ringtone, the opening bars of our song, the one we danced to at our wedding. I walked slowly back to the office and watched his name flash on the screen. He was calling from his cell, not the hotel phone he'd used last night to say goodnight and tell me about the boring keynote speech he'd had to sit through. I let it go to voicemail. Within seconds, a text appeared. "Hey, babe, in between sessions. How's your day going?" The casual normalcy of it, the audacity of maintaining this charade, even now finally broke through my shock. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the video again, took a screenshot of him kissing her, and sent it back to him with no comment. The 3 dots appeared immediately, disappeared, appeared again, then nothing for a full 5 minutes. When his response finally came, it was exactly what I should have expected. "Sophia, I can explain. Please don't do anything rash. I'm driving home now." Driving home from his non-existent conference to explain away what hundreds of people had already seen. To spin some story that might have worked if I'd discovered this privately, if the whole world hadn't watched my humiliation play out in the comments section of a Facebook video. I thought about all the times over the past months when I'd felt something was off. The way conversations would stop when I entered a room at his office parties. The pitying looks from the wives of his colleagues that I'd attributed to my freelance status, assuming they looked down on me for not having a real career. The way our mutual friends had started inviting me to more girls-only events, as if trying to build a support network I didn't know I'd need. Everyone had known. Everyone had been watching, waiting, preparing for this moment, while I'd been obsessing over throw pillow colors for the living room and planning a surprise party for his 40th birthday next month. I called Janet. "Oh, honey," she said instead of hello. "I'm already in my car. I'll be there in 10 minutes. You knew, it wasn't a question. I suspected she admitted. But I didn't have proof, and I didn't. God, Sophia, I didn't know how to tell you. I kept hoping I was wrong. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet of my office and opened my laptop again. Not to Facebook this time, but to our shared bank accounts. If Marcus had been living a double life, there would be evidence beyond social media gossip. I'd handled our personal finances while he managed the investments, a division of labor that now seemed dangerously naive. The credit card statements told the story I'd been too trusting to read. Charges at restaurants I'd never been to always for two. Hotel rooms in the city when he was supposedly at home. A jewelry store purchase from August. My birthday was in March, our anniversary in November. There was even a charge for Romanos from last night, while I'd been home watching Netflix and texting him about how quiet the house felt without him. The string of evidence went back further than June. As I clicked through statement after statement, I found suspicious charges dating back almost a year. A year of lies meticulously hidden in plain sight in our shared accounts that I'd had every right to monitor, but hadn't bothered to scrutinize because I'd trusted my husband. By the time Janet arrived armed with wine and righteous fury on my behalf, I'd documented 12 months of deception and discovered that our savings account was $30,000 lighter than it should have been. Apparently, affairs were expensive. The bastard, Janet muttered, scrolling through the evidence I'd compiled. I can't believe he was this sloppy. It's like he wanted to get caught. Or he just didn't think I was paying attention. I said, accepting the glass of wine she offered, even though it was barely 2 p.m. And he was right. I wasn't. We were sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by printed bank statements and the wreckage of my marriage, when Marcus's key turned in the lock. I'd been so absorbed in my financial forensics that I'd lost track of time. According to the grandfather clock in the corner, a wedding gift from his parents, it had been 3 hours since I'd sent him the screenshot. He entered cautiously like someone approaching a wild animal. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled, from what must have been a frantic drive home. When he saw Janet, his face darkened. I think we should talk privately, he said. Janet started to rise, but I put my hand on her arm. She stays. Everyone else has been part of our marriage lately. Why stop now? He had the decency to flinch. Sophia, please, let me explain. Explain how you've been having an affair for a year. How you've been stealing from our savings to fund it. How everyone we know has been watching this train wreck while I played the oblivious wife. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The words exploded out of me along with all the tears. I hadn't been able to cry earlier. There's video evidence, Marcus. Bank statements. The whole internet knows you're a cheating bastard. Mrs. Chen brought me a lasagna because she felt so bad about seeing you with another woman in our backyard. Our backyard, he sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. The confident, commanding man who'd left the house this morning was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Her name is Ashley, he said quietly. She's 26. It started as a mistake, a moment of weakness at the company retreat last year. I tried to end it, but what you accidentally kept taking her to restaurants, accidentally kept charging hotel rooms to our credit card. I fell in love with her. The words hung in the air between us, each one a nail in the coffin of our marriage. Janet's hand found mine, squeezing tight. And what about me? I asked when I could speak again. What about the woman you've been coming home to for 12 years? The one you made vows to. He finally looked up, and I was shocked to see tears in his eyes. Marcus never cried. I'd seen him tear up exactly twice, at his father's funeral and when the Seahawks won the Super Bowl. I do love you, Sophia. That's what makes this so hard. I love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore. Haven't been for a while. It was such a cliche, the kind of line cheating husbands delivered in bad movies. But coming from Marcus in our living room with our wedding photos, watching from the mantel, it was devastating in its banality. How long is a while? I asked. He shrugged helplessly. I don't know. Years, maybe. We became roommates instead of lovers, business partners instead of soulmates. And then Ashley came along and she made me remember what it felt like to be excited about someone, to want to discover everything about them. So instead of talking to me, instead of trying to work on our marriage, you decided to have an affair to humiliate me in front of everyone we know. I never meant for it to go public like this. Derek had no right to post that video. Derek had no right. I laughed, but it came out harsh and bitter. What about you? What right did you have to make me the last person in our social circle to know my marriage was over? Marcus didn't have an answer for that. He sat there in his wrinkled suit, looking every one of his 39 years, while I tried to reconcile this stranger with the man I'd planned to grow old with. I want you out, I said finally. Pack what you need for now. We'll figure out the rest later. Sophia, please, we should talk about this. Make a plan. The time for planning was before you decided to throw away our life for a 26-year-old analyst. I stood pulling Janet up with me. Get out, Marcus. Go to Ashley's. Go to a hotel, I don't care. Just go. For a moment, I thought he might fight me on it. This was his house too, after all. But then he nodded, defeated, and headed upstairs to pack. Janet and I listened to his footsteps above us, the opening and closing of drawers, the zip of a suitcase. You're doing the right thing, Janet whispered. It didn't feel right. It felt like my world was ending, like everything I'd built my identity around wife partner. Marcus's other half was crumbling. But what was the alternative? Pretending I hadn't seen the video acting like the last year hadn't happened, joining the ranks of wives who looked the other way. Marcus came back downstairs with a duffel bag and his laptop case. He paused at the door, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't read. For what it's worth, he said, I'm sorry. Not for falling in love with Ashley, but for how you found out. You deserved better than that. I deserved better than all of it, I replied. After he left, Janet opened another bottle of wine, while I called a locksmith. It was petty maybe, but I needed to do something that felt like taking control. As we waited for the locksmith to arrive, I scrolled through my phone, finally returning all the calls and texts that had poured in throughout the day. Each conversation followed the same pattern shock that I hadn't known anger on my behalf, and offers of support that felt both genuine and tinged with the peculiar satisfaction people get from witnessing someone else's drama. My mother was already researching divorce lawyers. Rachel was planning to drive down for the weekend. Even my hairdresser had choice words about Marcus that made me laugh despite everything. But it was Mrs. Chen who surprised me the most. She appeared at my door again around dinner time, this time with her husband Tom, and a bottle of what looked like very expensive scotch. For later, she said, pressing it into my hands, when the wine isn't enough. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched. And thank you for trying to tell me even indirectly. Tom cleared his throat. We talked about it a lot, whether we should say something. But we didn't have proof, just suspicions, and we didn't want to cause problems if we were wrong. Plus, Mrs. Chen added, it's not really the kind of thing you can bring up over the fence. Nice weather we're having, and by the way, your husband might be cheating. We shared a laugh that felt good after the tears. As they turned to leave, Mrs. Chen paused. You know, dear, in some ways being the last to know might have been a blessing. I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. Hear me out, she continued. You had more time being happy. While everyone else was carrying this terrible secret worrying about you, you were living your life. That's not nothing. After they left, I thought about her words. Was ignorance really bliss? Would I rather have known months ago, lived with the suspicion and doubt, watched Marcus for signs of deception? Or was there something to be said for those extra months of peace false, though it was? The locksmith arrived as the sun was setting, efficiently changing the locks, while Janet ordered Thai food from my favorite place. My phone continued to buzz with notifications, friends checking in, and acquaintances who'd seen the video, even a few numbers I didn't recognize. The story of my marriage's implosion had apparently transcended my immediate social circle and was now prime gossip fodder for the greater Seattle metropolitan area. I turned off my phone. So what now? Janet asked as we sat among the takeout containers, the documentary we'd put on, playing unwatched in the background. It was a good question. What did you do when you discovered your life was a lie witnessed by everyone but you? How did you rebuild when the foundation you'd built on turned out to be sand? I have no idea, I admitted. File for divorce, I guess. Find a lawyer. Figure out how to untangle 12 years of shared everything. And that's the practical stuff. I mean, what about you? What do you want? What did I want? For the last decade, my wants had been so intertwined with Marcus's, with our shared goals and dreams, that I wasn't sure I knew anymore. We'd planned to start trying for kids next year, had talked about buying a vacation home on one of the islands. I'd been slowly building my design business with the security of his income as a safety net. I want to stop feeling like an idiot, I said finally. I want to stop replaying every interaction from the last year and wondering if everyone was laughing at me behind my back. I want to know how I missed it. You didn't miss it, Janet said firmly. You trusted your husband. That's what you're supposed to do in a marriage. He's the one who broke that trust, not you. She was right, of course, but it didn't make me feel less foolish. All those signs I dismissed or explained away, they seemed so obvious now. The new cologne, the sudden interest in working out, the way he'd been emotionally distant but physically affectionate, as if compensating for his guilt with gestures. Do you think everyone was laughing at me? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. Janet considered this. Some people, maybe. There are always those who enjoy drama. But most people, I think they felt bad for you. Nobody wants to be the messenger in these situations. We finished the wine and cracked open Mrs. Chen's scotch, which was indeed excellent and probably worth more than I wanted to know. As the evening wore on, the initial shock began to fade, replaced by a different kind of pain, the deep, aching grief of losing not just a marriage, but the future I'd imagined. Around midnight, Janet helped me upstairs to the bedroom. Our bedroom, though I supposed it was just mine now. The scotch had done its job a little too well, and the room spun gently as I sat on the edge of the bed. His pillow still smells like him, I said, then promptly burst into tears again. Janet rubbed my back while I sobbed, the kind of ugly crying that left you with a headache and swollen eyes. When I finally calmed down, she helped me strip the bed, stuffing the sheets into the washing machine and finding fresh ones in the linen closet. "I'm better," she asked when we'd remade the bed with sheets that didn't carry memories. Getting there, I lied. She stayed the night curling up beside me like we were teenagers at a sleepover. But there was no giggling about boys or planning our futures. Just the quiet breathing of my best friend and the knowledge that tomorrow I'd have to start facing a reality everyone else had already accepted. I woke up at 3 a.m. momentarily disoriented. For a blessed second, I forgot everything, the video, the confrontation, the locks I'd changed. Then it all came rushing back, and I had to breathe through the wave of nausea that followed. Careful not to wake Janet, I crept downstairs and made tea settling into the kitchen nook, where Marcus and I used to drink coffee and plan our days. His mug was still in the dishwasher from yesterday morning, had it really only been yesterday, and I found myself staring at it like it might hold answers. My laptop was still open on the kitchen counter, and against my better judgment, I navigated back to Facebook. The video had been taken down, whether by Derek or Facebook's moderators, I didn't know, but the damage was done. There were new messages in my inbox, most, from people I barely knew offering condolences or sharing their own stories of betrayal. One message caught my eye. It was from Linda Paulson, Derek's wife. "Sophia, I'm so sorry about what Derek did. He had no business posting that video. I want you to know that I gave him hell for it. Nobody deserves to find out that way. If you need anything, a lawyer recommendation, a place to stay, or just someone to talk to who's been through it, please don't hesitate to reach out. Solidarity, Linda. Been through it." I clicked on her profile and scrolled back through her timeline. There it was 3 years ago, a status change from married to divorced, followed by an outpouring of support from friends. I wondered if Derek had cheated too, if that's why he'd felt entitled to expose Marcus so publicly. I was still scrolling when my phone buzzed with a text. My heart lurched, thinking it might be Marcus, but it was from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, Sophia, this is Ashley. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I need you to know I didn't know he was married when we started. He told me you were separated, getting divorced. I only found out the truth a few months ago. I'm sorry, I know that doesn't help, but I wanted you to know." I stared at the message, reading it over and over. She hadn't known, or claimed she hadn't. Did it matter the last few months she'd known and continued anyway? But could I blame a 26-year-old for believing the lies of a charismatic older man who'd probably seemed like everything she wanted? I didn't respond. What was there to say, "Thanks for sleeping with my husband, but feeling bad about it"? No worries, you can have him. There was no etiquette guide for texting your husband's mistress. By the time Janet woke up, I'd drunk 3 cups of tea, compiled a list of divorce lawyers from online reviews, and started a spreadsheet of all our assets. Staying busy seemed like the only way to keep from falling apart. "Hi, you look terrible," she said, shuffling into the kitchen. Thanks, you look pretty rough yourself." She laughed, running her fingers through her tangled hair. "Scotch hangovers are no joke. How long have you been up?" Since 3. I got a text from her." Janet's eyes widened. "From the woman, what did she want?" I showed her the message. She read it twice, then handed my phone back with a disgusted sound. "She's trying to make herself feel better." "Oh, I didn't know he was married. I'm such a victim, too." "Please." "She said she only found out a few months ago and kept seeing him anyway," Janet interrupted. "Don't you dare start feeling sorry for her, Soph. She made her choices. She was right. Ashley had made her choices just like Marcus had made his. The only person who hadn't been given a choice was me, sitting at home in blissful ignorance, while my life was dismantled one secret rendezvous at a time. Rachel arrived that afternoon, sweeping in with hugs and tears and enough rage for both of us. She'd driven straight through from Portland, and her first order of business was to go through the house, removing all traces of Marcus. "You don't have to see his face every time you walk by," she said, taking down our wedding photos, with perhaps more enthusiasm than necessary. "Careful," I warned as she nearly dropped a crystal frame. "I might want to sell those." We spent the rest of the day in a strange sort of ritual cleansing. Photos went into boxes. His clothes went into garbage bags, some for him to collect, later others for donation, because why should he get back the sweater I'd bought him for Christmas? The little things were harder. The book he'd been reading on his nightstand, his favorite coffee creamer in the fridge, the running shoes by the door that still held the shape of his feet. What about this? Rachel held up a wooden sign from our honeymoon in Hawaii. The one that said "Live, Laugh, Love," that we'd bought ironically, but had somehow become sincere over the years. "Burn it," I said, only half joking. By evening, the house looked less like our home and more like my home, though the distinction still felt foreign. Janet had gone home to check on her own family, but promised to return tomorrow. Rachel was staying the weekend camped out in the guest room that I'd once hoped would be a nursery. We ordered pizza and opened another bottle of wine. I was going to need a new liver by the time this was over, and sat on the living room floor looking at the boxes we'd packed. Remember when you guys first bought this place?" Rachel asked. "You were so excited about having a yard." I remembered. We'd been married just 2 years, scraping together every penny for the down payment. The house had needed work, new kitchen, updated bathrooms, landscaping, but we'd seen potential. We'd spent weekends at Home Depot, arguing about paint colors and tile patterns, learning how to be homeowners together. Now I'd have to figure out if I could afford to keep it on my own. "I still can't believe everyone knew," I said, returning to the thought that had been plaguing me all day. How did I become the clueless wife I used to pride myself on being observant? You observed what he wanted you to observe," Rachel said. "He was managing your reality, showing you only what fit the narrative. It's like, what do magicians call it? Misdirection. So I was just watching the wrong hand while he made our marriage disappear, something like that." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the pizza growing cold between us. Outside, I could hear the normal sounds of the neighborhood kids playing dogs, barking, the distant hum of traffic. Life going on as usual while mine had imploded. "You know what the worst part is," I said suddenly. "I don't even know who I am without him. For 12 years, I've been Marcus's wife first, everything else second. My whole identity was wrapped up in us." Rachel reached over and squeezed my hand. "Then maybe this is your chance to find out who Sophia is on her own. As horrible as this is, as much as it hurts, you get to rebuild yourself however you want." It was a nice thought, empowering even. But sitting there, surrounded by the debris of my marriage, I couldn't imagine wanting to be anything other than the person I'd been yesterday morning, happily oblivious, secure in my life, loved by a husband who didn't exist. The weekend passed in a blur of lawyer consultations, financial planning, and the steady stream of people who felt compelled to share their opinions about my situation. Some were supportive, others were simply curious, and a few seemed to relish the drama of it all. I learned to develop a thick skin quickly, to smile and nod when people said things like, "I never liked him anyway," or "You're better off without him," as if that made any of it easier. Sunday evening, as Rachel prepared to drive back to Portland, we sat on the porch watching the sunset. The Hendersons were having a barbecue next door, the smell of grilling meat, and the sound of laughter drifting over the fence. Normal life, the kind I used to have. "No, you're going to be okay," Rachel said, reading my mind as only a sister could. "When?" I asked. "When does it stop feeling like someone hollowed out my chest?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But one day you'll wake up and realize you went a whole hour without thinking about him. Then maybe a whole morning, and eventually a whole day. And then you'll know you're healing." After she left, I walked through my reorganized house, trying to recognize it as home. The spaces where Marcus's things had been looked like missing teeth gaps that drew the eye. But there were also things I'd forgotten were just mine. The reading chair I'd bought before we met the art prince. I'd chosen the kitchen gadgets he'd never learned to use. My phone rang as I was getting ready for bed. Marcus's ringtone. I still hadn't changed it. I let it go to voicemail, but he called again immediately. On the third call, I answered. "What do you want, Marcus?" "Hey, I need to get some things from the house. My suit's some files from the office." "I'll pack them up. You can pick them up from the porch." "Sophia, please. We need to talk about the house, the accounts, everything. Our lives are too intertwined to just And to just what pretend you didn't blow it all up for someone half your age. He sighed. She's not half my age. Oh, excuse me, 13 years younger. That's so much better. This isn't productive. I'll have my lawyer contact yours. You already have a lawyer. The speed of it stung. How long had he been planning his exit strategy? Sophia, his voice softened. I know you hate me right now, and you have every right to. But we had 12 good years. Doesn't that count for something? It counted for everything, and I said. That's why this hurts so much. I hung up before he could respond, then blocked his number. Maybe it was petty, but I needed to control something even if it was just when and how he could reach me. That night, I lay in my bed and thought about what it meant to be the last to know. There was humiliation in it, certainly. The sting of public pity, the knowledge that I'd been walking around in a false reality, while everyone else saw the truth. But there was also, as Mrs. Chen had suggested, a strange kin.